Hi guys, I'm Ellie. I used to go by Elle, but I'm starting to hate how everyone's like, oh, she's such a loser, she's calling herself an Elle. So I'm gonna go by Ellie. I actually really wanted to be called Ellie when I first made this nickname. So hi, I'm Ellie. Welcome to the rebrand and welcome to Susty Talks. If you're new here, this is a community-centered podcast that is here to spark genuine conversations around ethical fashion, around sustainable change, and intersectional solutions. And I really hope this online space just drives positive change and empowers action. And I really do hope that it makes sustainability more accessible and relevant to everyone. And this is a self-funded initiative. Even if I was big, I would not be taking ads. I support all my efforts, all my work with my eBay and my Depop. So if you want to check out my offerings, I have vintage and affordable pieces that are super unique and I think you'd love them. And I also support this work by creating Mexican artisanal denim collections. I'm working on one right now. It's going to come out in October. So I look forward to that. It's basically just pushing for more upcycling in the fashion industry and to, challenge the narratives that are existing in the fashion industry right now, to fight against this idea of fast fashion and disposable consumption. So all the links will be in my description, and welcome to the podcast. Today, as you saw on the title, I just want to talk about how I don't trust sustainable fashion brands. I've never been able to support sustainable fashion brands, and I'm going to get into the specifics of why and what constitutes as a sustainable fashion brand. But guys, look at my shirt. It's butterflies and it's the planet. Do you see? Oh, I love butterfly shirts. It's giving fairy. It's giving vintage. I actually got this at a vintage shop, and it may sound ironic given the things I'm going to get into, but I paid $30 for it, and it's way overpriced for a shirt. But I really like it. So I think the shirt will show the juxtaposition of my ideas and my thoughts on hating sustainable fashion brands. But I think first and foremost, I must say, I don't like the idea that we have enough clothing to clothe the next 6 generations. Like, point blank, I think that's such an overwhelming fact to grapple with, that we have so much clothing that my kids will not even run out of clothing. If we preserve the things that we have now, we wash it, we take care of it, we preserve it, you don't need to make clothing anymore. If we stop making clothing right now, we'll have enough for so many generations, and that blows my mind. And as we continue to see so much setbacks in the face of climate action with this new presidential election, with Trump coming on board, I think it's more important than ever before to understand what's at stake when we continue to make clothing and we continue to support sustainable fashion brands. And I think this is really also important because we are in a current economic system called capitalism, and our money does count. And I think within capitalism, if we're not careful about how we interact with it, it can consume us, and it can actually allow people like Trump to continue to push the narratives and continue to be swayed by this idea of the American dream or economic empowerment, which I think is just often myth. It's almost like a myth, what we see as an American dream, because it's just harder and harder for us to survive and to thrive. Work is barely paying enough to survive. We barely have healthcare. We barely have benefits, if any. So when it comes to purchasing things, I feel like that's where we can really make a choice, even if it's a small one, and what we want to see in the world, and make a statement of no, I actually really care about the environment. I care about saving, my money or supporting this brand, blah, blah, blah. And the point is, it's I, for one, don't have a lot of money to work with. And so every time that I support or give my money to something, it means that I'm advocating for it in a way, or saying, and this is what I care about, or this is what I support, this is what I want in the world. And when I buy from let's say a luxury sustainable fashion brand, in a way I'm saying, oh, I'm advocating for luxury fashion. I'm advocating for like paying $1,000 for a piece that probably didn't really need to cost that much. And the thing inherently with like businesses and brands right now is that they're profit driven. They're entrenched in capitalism. They are trying to either make more things or sell more things to the public to, you know, increase their profit driven goals. If you want a successful business, you just have to make money. That's like it at the end of the day. So one of the things that I've noticed in terms of sustainable fashion is this desire or push for like sustainable fashion innovation. And one of the things that I've noticed recently within the sustainable fashion landscape is the push to make innovative materials, which I don't really understand because we already have enough fabric or like clothing for the next 6 generations. So I haven't been able to understand the hype or the desire or the need for people to make new materials or like innovative materials. It's just, it seems counterintuitive when we already have enough materials in the first place. And as a sustainable fashion advocate, I'm always like, how can we already reuse and reduce what we have versus like creating more, which I think that it's the whole reason we have a problem in the first place. Like, we have to find solutions because we're making too much, yet people that try to make a solution are making more stuff. So it's counterintuitive to me. And I think it's also resource intensive because, I mean, yeah, you can regenerate certain, you know, agricultural spaces to make, you know, certain like organic things. But at the end of the day, like, we need a holistic regenerative structure, and we don't have that. And it's not to say that we shouldn't, you know, make organic, you know, cotton, organic whatever, because there's no collective like structure, or there's like no collective regenerative thing going on. It's just, when we go to the Goodwill bins, I don't know if you've been, there's just so much. There's tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of clothing. And I just think to myself, someone is taking 5 to 6 years maybe to establish like their own acre of land. They're establishing the organic seeds to be implemented in this like little space, and then they have to grow it, and then they have to like spin it or like make it into threads so it can be made into something else, like clothing obviously. And then they have to market that their material works and blah blah blah. Like, there's processes and processes. I've skipped so many processes within that small like framework. But when I go to the Goodwill bins, I'm like, why are people taking years and years and years and years to build this like organic material or this like innovative material when we already have to deal with all this mess? So in my head, I'm like, oh, they're just shoving their problem into like the basement or into the garage and starting fresh and almost ignoring all this mess so they can start off clean. And I think that's a privilege in itself. And it shows this mindset of like, we can ignore all of this and still do our own thing. And I don't think that's a very collective perspective. I feel like the only sustainable fashion brand I truly respect or truly want to support is one that upcycles pieces, one that uses Deadstock materials, one that is actively trying to fix the overwhelming amounts of clothing that are just being left to be thrown away or, you know, delivered to third world countries and destroying local economic markets. It's just, I just really don't know how it makes sense for people to just create collections or create things from new materials that haven't been used, that haven't been made from like used things already, if that makes sense. Like, why would you make materials from like virgin resources? Why would you make things from new things if you are an advocate for sustainable fashion? My brain is becoming muddled, and I don't know if I'm making sense, but I just really don't think we need new sustainable fashion pieces. I think we can always have the option, we should have the option to go to a thrift store. We should go to the Goodwill bins. We should donate to each other. We should do clothing swaps. We should have like free clothing distribution systems. But that's not set up. And yet, I don't want to trash on like business, you know, people, but sustainable fashion brands are business people. And they don't profit from hosting free clothing swaps. They don't profit from giving away clothing for $1 or for building community around an issue. They're just seeing it as like a profit-driven thing of like conscious consumerism. It helps expensive, sustainable fashion brands to advocate for the prices. Like, I understand it takes more money to make sustainable materials, to make sustainable clothing if it's from like a virgin resource. But I think this idea of conscious consumerism is tied to privilege, because a lot of people that advocate and use this term are often like wealthy or middle class or just aware of the issues in the fashion industry, and that requires time and attention. So a working class person is probably not thinking about conscious consumerism. I, for example, I'm a working class person, but I did have the privilege to go into college. I did have the privilege of being supported to learn and research these things when I didn't have a full-time job. And it was because I had people backing me up. I had a support system. I wasn't alone in my struggle. So I think people that understand conscious consumerism have the money, have the time, have the privilege to support sustainable fashion brands most of the time. It's not a monolith. My statements are not a monolith. Like, I say this and I'm not part of the generalization I'm saying. But I do think sustainable fashion brands take advantage of our conscientiousness, our awareness, and they overprice things more so than they should, despite it costing more to use these innovative, virgin, organic resources to just make more money from the whole problem itself. So I think it's a very greedy, insidious thing to do. And it brings me to the point of like, if I was to buy from sustainable fashion brands, what would I buy and why? And one of the things that came to mind was underwear. I have never bought thrifted underwear ever before in my life, and I don't plan to. I think it's nasty. I think it's not a very hygienic thing to do, and you don't know the story of the person. Everybody has their different, organic chemicals that has their fluids coming out. You don't know if they had any sicknesses or illnesses. So I've never thrifted underwear, even if they were technically new. And I've also never really have worn thrifted socks, just because of like this idea of fungi, and like I just don't like feet in general. So I've never really thrifted socks either. So honestly, the only thing I personally would support, and all of these statements are my experiences. These are my beliefs. If you support other brands, that's okay. But for me, the only sustainable fashion brands I would support are ones that are selling sustainable underwear and socks, and also bras. I've never really thrifted bras either. But the thing that I've noticed is that options are limited. There isn't a lot of like fashionable options, and maybe it's because a lot of the sustainable fashion scene are compromised by older, whiter generations that just kind of like want more bland, sort of millennial coded things. So I would say like we do need more Gen Z coded options that are sustainable and affordable, but all of those combinations are far from the truth right now, because like to be affordable usually doesn't mean sustainable, and to be trendy usually means that it's geared to a younger audience, and sustainable fashion is not that right now. It's more coded to like millennials and to baby boomers who have that like spending money, that have that sort of privilege of like having more time to shop online, to investigate what sustainable fashion means, to investigate brands. But I really do hope that more people take on this aspect of like, how do I create underwear that's sustainable? How do I make socks that are sustainable and also trendy, so more people can support something that I think most of us wouldn't even buy thrifted. Like, I consider myself a huge sustainable fashion advocate, and I would never ever buy used underwear and socks. So I think there's a huge market there. But again, I think ideally it would be made from Deadstock material or upcycling pieces in some way, but that's kind of hard to do with like such intimate materials. I do think it can be done. It's just fabrics would be deeply cleaned, deeply treated. There'd be a whole process that would probably cost money. But I mean, washing things can always resave a piece. Like That's one of the things that I've learned when I used to work at a thrift store. We would get rid of things just because they had a stain, or just because they were dirty, or because it was like yellowing in some place because it had a stain or whatever. We would get rid of it and not sell it in the store. But they were perfectly good pieces. It's just they weren't washed before they were donated. They weren't taken care of before they were like given to us. And that's such a shame. There's like so much material that we can use. So a possible idea for like entrepreneurs is like, how can I collect fabric or donations of some sort and recreate it to become underwear or bras or socks? There's a lot of like laundry mats. There's a lot of washing machines around. It's just, I don't think a lot of people set out to be a businessman by washing things, you know, except if you want to be like a laundromat owner or something. I think that's such an easier solution in my eyes than like taking years and years and years to develop an innovative material. And it just makes me wonder about the psychology of like why some people just want to grow something completely new and not wash things. Washing just seems so simple. Like, can you imagine partnering with thrift stores even and being like, hey, I'll take any of the goods that you don't want that are in decent condition, it's just they're dirty. And then you have the privilege to pay for the bags of clothing that the thrift store rejected for whatever reason, sifting through it and choosing the pieces that you think are worthy to be washed, washing them, and then recirculating them out into the community. Because sometimes all a thing needs is a wash. It needs some stain treatment. It needs some care. And thrift stores don't have the time to do that. And that's why some of the things are just like discarded or said no to. So it just makes me wonder how we can reinterpret innovation as well. Like, what is the mentality of sustainable fashion founders too? Like, I know there's money to be made in the issues in the fast fashion industry. I know that. I don't understand. I guess I'm grappling with like, I don't understand why we need innovative materials when we just need innovative ideas and out of box thinking. Another thing that I'm also always wondering about is like, why do sustainable fashion founders decide to be founders of a business versus being an activist or just an advocate? And maybe it's because they want to make money. They want to have their own business. They want to be their own founder. They want to be their CEO. They want to be the executive director. And it makes me assume there's a sense of egoism there, a sense of like, I want to be the leader. I want to be the top dog. I want to like set the direction. I want to set the strategy. And I think if you're from a Western country or from like a European background, for me personally, it does give a sense of like colonizer vibes of like, I want to shape the industry in my way and set the path. So I think a lot of times, to say it quite bluntly, I've seen white women be called the Trailblazers. They say that about themselves, like they're the ones putting those labels. Where I'm the trailblazer, I'm the thought leader, I am the path maker, and it's just like sustainable fashion has been happening forever. Like, it's been around forever. Like, we've always been rewearing our pieces. We've always been taking care of our stuff. Even in indigenous communities, sustainability was just like a natural part of their life. So like, these women are not trailblazers. They're not thought leaders. They're just leading the idea that we need to be more sustainable. But sustainability has been ingrained in so many communities for so long. So I think I just can't shake off this idea that I can't trust maybe the brands, because the founders are just inherently trying to call themselves something that they're not. They're not thought leaders. They're not trailblazers. They're not innovators. They're just simply maybe trying to make a solution but failing very miserably, and also centering capitalism when that is kind of the reason why we're in this mess in the whole first place. Like, in the whole reason we're here is because of capitalism. So I don't understand these women, these leaders, and it's not to necessarily blame the issues or blame everything on them. It's just, we have so much to lose right now if we don't take action. And I do think we need more activists. We do need more advocates. We need people pushing for real change. We need more human rights advocates, lawyers stepping up. And so I just hate the idea of that people are profiting from an issue, centering their ego, centering this idea that they're like the founder or they're the trailblazer, when they're truly not. But I do think this ideology is kind of entrenched too in like the sense of the American dream, where you want to like accomplish big things and have like this big sense of purpose. I just feel like this ideological framework of an American dream often makes us do things that are not truly ethical and equitable, but we still want to label it as that. So I don't know if you guys have heard of the term greenwashing, which is like when people say something's sustainable but it's not. I feel like what a lot of founders and a lot of brands are doing is, in my eyes, called social washing, which is when they say, oh, I'm doing a great thing, or this is for society, or this is for the betterment of everyone, and this is for a better path for us. But it's like, it's really not. Like, if you look at the actions, it's just profit-driven goals that are covered in this idea of like, I'm doing great, like we're doing great. But who is this benefiting? I think it's just for yourself. And honestly, I would just like to highlight too, like, do you really think if a consumer buys from, let's say, a typical sustainable fashion brand that sells like, let's say, shirts and pants made from organic cotton, each shirt is priced, let's say, $200, and it's made in, let's say, in a third world country that pay their workers equitably, do you think they did a good thing, or do you think they did a bad thing? You would probably say it's a good thing, but ethics is not so black and white, and that's what I'm trying to get into the nuance of. Maybe, yeah, they're doing some good, but also I'm exploring deeply there's the psychology and like the big picture result of this. Like, ideally, I want everyone to be paid a fair living wage. Don't get me wrong. Ideally, we would have a lot of opportunities for people to make artisanal clothing, to be given good working conditions, to be given fair, wages, but that's not the reality right now. And so I can't justify the existence of sustainable fashion brands though, just because they give good working conditions to their workers. Like, that should just be a norm that we should all be pushing and establishing. And just because some brands do it doesn't mean we can excuse everything else that they're doing. And I'm not saying we need to take down these sustainable fashion brands. Like, no, like, they're gonna remain. I can't force them to shut down. That's not my intention for them to shut down. But I'm thinking, like, how do we make this continue to be a better sustainable fashion industry for all of us in the long run, and to really deeply explore like the intentions, the reason. And I personally come from a political ideology that centers more around like socialism and communism versus supporting capitalism. So that's kind of where I'm coming from as well. And I'm still on a learning journey. I'm not saying I'm perfect or that my ideas will fix everything that's going on in the world. And I do have some like conservative leanings in terms of like how I don't really think that we should be ending the life of a baby. I am pro-choice, but I'm also like, I would never do anything that would end the life for anyone. So that's just like where I'm coming from. There's a lot of like scales within my own thinking as well. Like, nothing is truly black and white. I would just like to say too, like, I'm an intersectional feminist. I am an abolitionist, and I would just want to make sure that there is like more women rights, more labor rights, like more justice, in the sense that how we make fashion can really help everyone in the long run. And within like fashion brands, I do see this sense of like wanting economic justice, like bringing opportunities to ourselves while still bringing a solution forth. So I totally see that. But also a thing that comes from this is like overconsumption. How do we avoid promoting more things into this world when we don't need more things? Like, are we just making people buy more unnecessary things if there's already enough to clothe the next 6 generations? But it also brings this question of like ethical consumption. Like, is there any ethical consumption under capitalism? A lot of people would say no, because everything is just like made badly. There's no good working conditions. But I do think that there can be some ethical good things in midst of consumption. It's just like, it's a matter of like getting there. It's a matter of changing the system as well. It's both like an individual and collective effort that will take years and years to get to, and we can all do this. Like, I know sustainable fashion advocates can be like just general supporters. They can be as young as 16, they can be as old as 80. Like, we can come from so many different backgrounds. Like, I'm Mexican American and I support sustainable fashion my own way, but I know someone from like India can support in their own way. Like, where it's a very nuanced topic. Like, this is not a monolith. Like, we can't generalize things too much. So I'm always just kind of wondering like how we can make fashion represent the diversity, how we can represent our wide range of backgrounds, how we can support more people from different needs and wants. But I think one of the things that we'll always need is like underwear and bras and socks, no matter where we're from. I think those will always be essentials. I think those are the true essentials out of everything. I don't really think logos are essentials, even though that's kind of why we buy from certain places. But we do spend a lot of money to support those brands for some reason. And it's been normalized to just care about brands versus anything else. And those like wants have become needs in a way. And also it like brings me to a deeper question of like what constitutes a brand? What constitutes a logo, and what constitutes us supporting something or someone? For example, I think the hypocrisy though of out of these questions is that I myself have built a brand around sustainable fashion. I myself can be considered a sustainable fashion brand because I am selling products. I'm selling my eBay things. I'm selling Depop items. I'm promoting artisanal fashion collections. I'm providing content in a way that can be a product. And I am also telling you to support me and support my ideas for the sake of providing more and more and more in the future. So in a way, I am being a hypocrite because I'm also just being a leader and a founder of sorts of a sustainable fashion brand. So it's kind of inescapable to not be a fashion owner or fashion brand when there isn't a lot of companies to work with. There isn't a lot of like opportunities to work in sustainable fashion if you're not a freelancer, which is sad. It's not like the route of becoming a doctor. There is no way to study and study and study and study and then become a leader in some respect in a hospital or in whatever place you're working at. Like, you have to find your path in sustainable fashion. You have to make your own business, sadly, to make it in this field. And I do think it needs some egoism, unfortunately. I don't know. I think there's very much a lot of nuance that I'm trying to grapple with. But something that I always try to tell myself is like reselling and recirculating vintage pieces will always be needed. We'll always need to constantly circulate out the loads and loads and loads of things that are entering in our world, unfortunately. And I just try to like find new homes for the things that I have in my closet and just try to help with my efforts of education and advocating for laws and advocating for people to become more informed about the news. I do like live streams twice a week where I talk about the news. So I do think there's some like innovation in the things that I'm doing, but it's not necessarily creating new materials or new things per se. It's just finding new avenues to get to a better fashion industry. And there is no hopes that we'll actually get to a better fashion industry. There is no like thing that will promise us, hey, like we have achieved a sustainable fashion industry. So just grappling with all those things is super important as we move forward. I mean, you can be a founder, you can be a leader, you can call yourself a trailblazer. Like I said, I can't stop you, but at the same time, like, I have to be super honest and be like, I would need to be a business owner to continue doing the work I do in sustainable fashion. Yeah, I really wish there was more opportunities though. Like, I wish I could go to a local company and do like sustainable fashion work, or that ESG work was easier to get into, but it's not. Like, it's not a very huge thing. There is like no clear-cut way to just like enter the field. So I really just hope to create my own small thrift store, my own small business where I can just like receive donations and help recirculate it out, so it doesn't have to end up in the dumpster. I think that will take like years and years and years to do. Like, I don't think my thrift store will become into an existence very soon. Like, I don't have the startup money to start that. I don't have the like time to do that right now. So that's like a long-term goal. I would love it to be filled with plants. I would love for it to be filled with like informative zines, like informative brochures, guides, information about what's happening in the fast fashion industry. I would love for it to recirculate clothing on a very affordable basis. I don't know what's happening in thrift stores, but I've noticed that they're getting more and more expensive, that they're literally just becoming a boutique. Like, they sell sweaters for like $10. I'm like, this is what it costs at Walmart. They sell pants and they're like $15. They sell shoes and they're like $20. They sell shirts and they're like $10. These prices are not affordable, and you end up grabbing like 3-4 things and it's like $40 or $50 for a couple things. You're like, whoa, did I just spend all this on this? Hopefully in the future I can, like, once everything's set up, I can sell things super affordably. So shirts like $2, sweaters $3, pants $5, shoes $4. Like, having standard cheap prices for like basic items. Because honestly, I was reading articles and like things, and they were saying that 60% of items don't reach the store floor, and most of it's just like donated away to companies that then ship it to third world countries. So all of this money that could be made just by recirculating things really fast, but on a very cheap basis, doesn't happen. Instead, I've seen thrift stores have these huge prices, and the items just sit and sit and sit on the store floor, as all these donations are constantly just being circulated out onto these companies that then ship them to third world countries. It just doesn't make sense to me why thrift stores are so greedy, why founders are so reluctant to price things affordably when they have the capacity to do so. Like, I've worked in many thrift stores. I've seen their pricing strategy. I've seen how much donations come in. I've seen how much money they make. They can afford to make things cheaply. It's just they don't want to. And it's not like this price gentrification thing that I've been seeing, where like, if you are not from the town, or if you're wealthier and you come to thrift stores and buy stuff, like the prices hike up because of that. Like, no, they're not tracking demographics like that. They have no idea if you're from the town or not. Like, they're just wanting you to buy things expensively. It doesn't matter if you live 5 minutes away or an hour away. They just want you to pay the most amount of money for the goods that they have. Yet they're throwing almost everything away, giving away everything. Like, I just don't get it, because I personally worked at a thrift store in Montana, and they literally would make like $20,000 a day. That was before costs, before salaries, before like everything, you know, $20K. And I think they were making, like, keeping a chunk of it. Like, they were making most of the $20K. Like, I don't think it's too expensive to, you know, operate a thrift store. I think the biggest expense was rent and like employees' salaries, but they only paid us $18 an hour. And if they're making $20K a day, like, you can kind of tell they're making bank. And they were doing really well despite the manager never really being there. She wasn't really managing the place. Donations were coming in only twice a week, or no, 3 times a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, from like 9 to 2. So it was like 6 hours at a time that we were receiving donations, and we would just get loads and loads and loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of stuff. And it was crazy, the things that we saw. It was spectacular how much trash we ended up having. Like, we had this little shed at the side of where we took donations. It was a small shed, but it would get filled every week. It would be busting out of the seams. They could probably fit like over 800 bags of clothing every week. It was just not realistic for us to be able to fit everything in the store. So in the long run, I think having a thrift store will allow me to continue my sustainable fashion work and still provide this accessible, affordable option to my local community. Because ideally I would want to start it like in my home city. And once that's established, the goal would be to have like a washing system, like a laundromat system, where anything that was like dirty or stained or kind of grungy would be separated in colors, and then we would wash it based on its colors. So like the blacks would be washed with the blacks, the white clothing would be bleached with other like white clothing, red clothing would be washed together with the other red clothing that we would gather, and then we would make sure to dry the pieces, obviously, and then remend them or restore them. But usually it just takes a wash for them to come back to life. That's all we really need. And then resell those at a slightly higher price, but with the awareness to the customer through like a tag or through like a sign that we resaved these things that otherwise would have been thrown away. I think that's an innovation that we need that we have never seen before. It just takes more effort, it takes more intention, it takes investment, obviously, but it is possible. And I think with the lack of third spaces, it'd be amazing if we had another section of the thrift store that's like a hangout spot, you can say, where people can learn how to sew, learn how to craft, learn how to knit, learn how to make their own bags. You know, all these little skills can actually be so incredibly powerful. How to become a tailor. All these things matter, and they can bring community, they can bring a sense of fulfillment and purpose for those that care about their fashion, but have no place to learn any of these things, have no place to meet people that care about these things. Because most people don't have a sustainable fashion community that they can meet, you know, weekly on a local basis. And that's like my long-term vision, so I can continue pushing out this idea that we can work together to create solutions, that we can do small things that do add up, and we don't have to escape to this like online world or escape to this like fantasy of like organic farms or whatever to reach sustainable fashion. I think most of us buy from sustainable fashion brands that do like regenerative or organic things because that's the only way we think we can support it or truly honor alternatives. But alternatives can look like a lot of different ways. It can be as simple as helping sort through donations if you want. Like thrift stores are always in need of volunteers and workers. Again, there's so much in existence. There is so much. I really wish everyone just worked at a thrift store for like a week. We would be so overwhelmed. Yeah, it's personally very anxious inducing for me to know that we have a climate emergency and we're on this constant cycle of making things. I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over and over again. But one of the things that I also want to point out is that I don't know if you've ever seen like Deadstock fabric resellers, but I have struggled a lot on finding like Deadstock businesses online. And by that I mean like they're selling fabrics, they're selling, I don't know, pieces by the bulk to people around the nation or people around the globe. It's just not a very popular business idea, I guess. I guess it's just hard to get the materials in the first place, like the Deadstock material in the first place. And then to sell them to different places would probably be a feat in itself because a lot of people are not buying Deadstock material. You'd probably be selling to designers or, I don't know, small production studios of some sort. But that's definitely something that could be possible if you receive donations, wash them, and then put the options online and sell in bulk. That could be a profitable business idea. It's just as starting it and trying it. And because I don't think it's very normalized or just done, people don't feel confident in doing. In an ideal world, I wouldn't be doing this podcast. Ideally, I wouldn't be talking about psychology and wondering about things so much in terms of the fashion industry. But we're entrenched in this mess, and I think I keep repeating myself because I don't really hear anyone talk about this. I don't see anyone grappling with this. My fashion professors never really discussed any of this with us. we were just fed generic, general information that didn't really serve anyone. It didn't really make us think. It didn't allow us to ask questions. It didn't provide us a deeper meaning to fashion beyond just its superficial vibes. So I'm sorry if this was just a ramble. If you're listening, I really do hope you take some initiatives to host free clothing swaps, to have more community spaces around sustainable fashion, find opportunities that align with what we really need versus doing it just to say that we're like successful or we're leaders or founders. Like, I get it, you need validation of some sort, but I don't think in sustainable fashion that's essential. It's not a thing that we really will need to have to create solutions. Like, we can all be team leaders or team members, not team leaders. I guess that brings to mind that we don't really value becoming a team member. Like, we always want to be the best or the brightest or whatever, the prettiest. But I think as we move forward, we just need to be on a more collective team member basis. Like, we're helping, pass this law, or we're helping host this clothing swap, or we're helping build this together. Yeah, my hope is that you become more critical. You don't need to spend $200 on a shirt. You don't have to prioritize overpriced items. You can go to your local thrift store. You can buy from Depop. You can buy from eBay. You can support local thrift stores. You can use what you have in your closet, because at the end of the day, that's the truly most sustainable option there is. And hopefully that we just continue to do more, ethical and equitable options together. And things will be murky, don't get me wrong. There is no straight line forward. There is no guide we can follow step by step. But I've seen that need for some reason, that we just need someone to be telling us what to think and what to believe and what to understand. That's not my purpose, and it won't ever be my purpose. I feel like I'm often hosting these podcasts as a conversation opener, as a think piece. It's okay to go around in circles. I don't want to be the expert. I don't want to have an answer to everything. I don't want to come off as the one being like, this is the only acceptable thing ever. But again, there's a juxtaposition happening where I'm like criticizing sustainable fashion brands, but I'm a sustainable fashion brand. I'm criticizing founders, but I myself am a founder or something. I can be criticizing, people selling a shirt for $30. That's way too expensive in my eyes, but here I am wearing it. I think I will continue going in spirals, to continue looking for answers and continue thinking about things. And it's okay to ask questions and to not know. I feel like in past social justice movements and spaces, people would look down on me because I would ask questions, because I was hyper fixated on understanding the deeper meaning. Even in social justice movements, people would criticize me. They're like, why are you asking so many questions? Why are you pushing back? And I'm like, no, I'm just trying to learn. Like, I'm trying to explore. And one of the main reasons that I am live streaming is because I'm able to ask those questions. I'm able to learn. I'm able to delve into different articles and different perspectives and wonder what is happening and how it's happening and where we can go from this. I don't call myself a journalist. I don't call myself a content creator either. I'm just simply trying to learn. I'm just a human. But all these terms and all these things box us in to act a certain way or be a certain way, when it's I think at the end of the day, it's the meta question of who am I and what am I doing? And often enough, it's easy to just label ourselves as something and to quote unquote start fresh and do our own thing. But it's individuality is needed, but it's also how is this connected to everything else, and how is this connected to a good purpose, or a purpose that benefits not only us but others. And I think that's just an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing journey. That's one of the real reasons why I've been hesitant on bringing on guests into this podcast, because it would almost in a way assume that I'm a leader or an expert in this field, because the conversations become more formalized. They become professionalized. They become, I don't know, more about the accomplishments, more about the external aspects of things. Like, let me talk about the certifications my blah 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 has, or let me explore these concepts of how I believe we should change the world when like your actions don't align to them. I just like the idea that we're all on a journey, and I don't want to pretend that we're not all on this journey, and I don't want to professionalize our efforts. Like, professionalism is just a concept. It is. Like, I don't believe in professionalism. I don't believe in social constructs of behavior. I don't believe that we need job titles or job descriptions. Like, we're all just doing things and we're all guessing. I mean, I respect doctors. They've studied and studied and studied and studied. They're not gods, but they can actively try to understand what's wrong and fix them. I think those are the only true, I guess, experts we have, because they've dedicated so much to learn things and to save lives. So yeah, I think doctors and lawyers are people that I truly respect. Maybe in another life, if I wasn't so like traumatized by blood, I would have become a doctor. I've always been interested in law. I've always been drawn to it. I just never had courage to pursue it. I just didn't think it was like something I was worthy to pursue. But I definitely was drawn to it in school. Maybe in my other life, and in my next life, I'll become a lawyer. Yeah, I think we're all just trying to do something, but we lose track. And hopefully I don't lose track. Hopefully I don't lose myself to profit-driven things that are devoid of value. Hopefully the thrift store will allow me to set the pace that are for the benefit of our community versus for myself. Like, it's not going to be profitable washing clothing. It's not going to be profitable creating third spaces. It's not profitable creating community. It's not profitable even now to be making YouTube videos about this topic. I could be talking about trendy topics. I could be gaming popular games. You know, I can be following the trends, but I'm not. So even this effort itself is just for me to do something for others, even though it's not going to directly help me financially. And I don't even put any of these things on my resume. So I'm not doing it for job experience either. I'm just purely doing it because I want people to think more about this and to become more critical. So hopefully this podcast helped. I did talk in circles and circles and circles today, but this just has been circulating in my head, and I'm not being paid for this. I don't have to report to anyone. So yeah, hopefully you liked it. Let me know what your thoughts were, and hopefully I continue to have more genuine conversations with you guys, and hopefully the people that come on are not just people that are selling their products to you and telling us how great they are, because that's not what I want us to do. So yeah. If you know anyone that wants to be a guest, let me know. Till next time, peace and love. Bye.